Welcome back, NBs, girls, fellas. Hey. Last time we looked at the aesthetics of intellectualism, the way that toxic masculinity and fascist rhetoric disguise themselves as thinky man speak, and of course, how creepy old guys with bad ideas seduce the younger generations into following them.
Have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis? Yeah, the wise, that's right, yeah. No, I didn't think you would've, no. It's not the kind of story the Jedi would tell.
This was supposed to be a sequel to that, but then something happened. On October 4th, 2019, something so important it shook the foundations of society occurred. On October 4th, 2019, Joker was released.
Wanna know how I got these scars? Well, I'm the Joker, baby!
Alright lads, it's like this. Joker fucking slaps, and here's why, right? Joker, the Joker guy, he laughs at stuff, but he's not laughing because he's happy, right? He's laughing because he's sad, super sad as fuck. But then he realizes, the stuff that's making him sad? Pretty funny. Okay, no, this isn't going to be a Joker video. I just think it's interesting the way the film is being received. See, Joker is a dangerous movie that will inspire incels to do misogynist terrorism, apparently. If you believe the reviewers who drummed up a mass panic about the film's politics before it was even out. But if you've actually seen it, there's a pretty clear anti-austerity political narrative. Not about the disenfranchisement of men who can't get dates, but about the disenfranchisement of the poor, of the working class. Joker even tells a joke in which he kills someone, a sort of killing joke, if you will, in which he says, "What do you get if you cross a mentally ill loner with a society that treats him like garbage? You get what you deserve." Bang. So why are these reviewers so convinced that Joker is an incel film? Well, in part it has to be because people are becoming more aware that individual mental health and the general broader state of society are extremely closely linked. In capitalist realism, Mark Fisher makes a case for certain mental illnesses and personality disorders being rooted in a conflict between human nature and basic needs and how we're expected to behave under capitalism. Now, I think it's important to acknowledge that the pessimistic voice with which Fisher writes about this situation is probably largely informed by his own depression, and I don't see eye to eye with him on everything here, but as far as the basic relationship goes, I think he's right on the money. And community psychology, the study of individual mental health with the broader context of the society we live in, is one of the most useful tools we have for looking at the world. For example, if we're looking at men and their mental health, it would be sensible to look at how society treats masculinity, especially in a society in which feminism exists, which has critiqued toxic masculinity. And so many men seek to hide their shitty behavior, either by disguising it as false intellectualism, like we discussed before, or by using comedy and irony, by becoming, in a technical term here, the Joker, baby. It would be useful to look at how creating a character of yourself, a sort of mask or painted face, allows you to distance yourself from any criticisms, but also might stop you from being truly introspective, which could seriously harm your emotional growth. But hey, this isn't a Joker video, so that's all irrelevant. Don't worry about that, just forget about it, just put it in the bin. Let's talk about Gavin McInnes and the Proud Boys. Let's start here. Who is Gavin McInnes? Gavin McInnes is an Scottish-Canadian, far-right political commentator, originally born in Hitchin, England. Oh, so he was one of the lads, one of our boys. Why is he founding an American nationalist gang then? Well, we'll get back to that, but first, here's how he got there. Gavin grew up in Canada and worked as a writer before forming Vice magazine in 1994, after which Gavin came to be worth $10 million. Right. It's not really one of the boys then. Gavin was pushed out of Vice eventually because everyone there thought he was a piss boy, after which he founded an ad agency called Rooster, but he was pushed out of that too because everyone there also thought he was a... Oh, because he penned an essay titled "Transphobia is Perfectly Natural." So, there's transphobia again. Funny that. Really not one of the boys at all, is he? Naturally, Gavin needed another big win after being pushed out of Rooster in 2014, so that's more or less when he founded the Proud Boys. I spoke to someone very familiar with the Proud Boys, and they said,
The basics are that Gavin McInnes wanted to start a midlife crisis fraternity and landed inside of a violent street gang.
and you know, that's just a really good summary. That confluence between midlife crisis fraternity and violent street gang has led to a consistently embarrassing existence for the Proud Boys. The Proud Boys just didn't show up to the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville in 2017, and honestly that's probably for the best because the most thorough and extensive coverage of the event was done by Vice, and that would have been embarrassing for Gavin. If anything, this showed that Charlottesville really was a lose-lose situation for the alt-right, because the gangs who did show up there outed themselves as open white supremacists, and the gangs that didn't show up were then ridiculed by the rest of the alt-right as cowards. For a while, the Proud Boys had a subreddit, r/Proudboys, but then it was infiltrated and overthrown by non-fascists, and now it's a place for trans men to post selfies. You know, proud boys. Boys who actually have something to be proud of. There's also that time that one of the Proud Boys tweeted that his mum performs oral sex on him and the whole gang, but my family watch my channel, so I'm just gonna get on with the video now. Somewhere along the line, the Proud Boys gained their tiered system to determine who is the proudest boy. I mean, basically the answer is it's Gavin, but he's devised this system to make it so his boys can proudly strive to be as proud a boy as him. Firstly, you have to recite an oath to say that I am a proud Western boy, blah blah blah. Second, you have to get punched while reciting pop culture trivia. I know, it's really sounding like the coolest gang you ever heard of. Next, you have to give up masturbation, and then get a Proud Boys tattoo, a part of this system which is proving increasingly difficult as more tattoo parlors become aware that the Proud Boys are a nationally recognized hate group with links to actual neo-Nazis. The last step is, of course, violence for the cause. And that's an interesting one, because what is their cause exactly? It can be really easy to assume that they're a white supremacist group, but they aren't actually exclusively white, and they aren't even as homogenous as you might expect. I don't want to leave it unsaid, the Proud Boys are a racist group, and they are fascists, and white supremacists are clearly a dime a dozen in their membership, but they aren't actually a white supremacist group. We'll get back to it. But it's also a very serious and pretty scary step. Everything else so far has been ridiculous, really deserving of your scorn and your laughter, but then they do this? They get in a serious fight for the cause? We keep on laughing at them because they are ridiculous, and then they suddenly are calling at the homes of anti-fascist activists and threatening them into silence? Suddenly making the surprisingly small step from sad meme lord pissboy gang to domestic terrorist organization. By the way, if you want to do your bit to help stop the Proud Boys, one of the most effective things you can do is attack their revenue sources. For example, 1776.shop, the online shop they set up to raise funds for the legal defense of their pissboy goons convicted of assaulting protesters. But how can you help shut down the shop, you ask? Well, 1776.shop is powered by SQUARESPACE, an easy-to-use online tool that makes it easier than ever before to make your fascist terrorist group a reality. SQUARESPACE has loads of easy-to-use tools that make it so easy to get your domestic terrorism up and running today! I'm never going to get that sponsorship. Please share my Patreon. Anyway, now the Proud Boys are a recognized hate group, and that's when Gavin says he wants off this ride. In November 2018, Gavin McInnes did not step down as the leader of the Proud Boys. He wanted to be super crystal clear he was
never the leader, only the founder.
So I guess we should be clear too. He hasn't stopped being the leader. He's quit being the founder. He's not the founder anymore. He's done founding the group. No Proud Boys look up to him as their founder anymore. They don't expect any foundership from Gavin.
How did we get here? We are living in clown world.
It was a really strange statement, actually. He claimed that white supremacists and white nationalists don't exist, and accidentally said that gay people are a separate race.
Is this whole idea of white nationalism and white supremacy is a crock. Why are we talking about it so much? Such people don't exist. We are a multiracial club with blacks, Jews, gays, Asians, etc.
It wasn't the most clear or concise rhetoric, but what did come across straightforwardly is that Gavin really realized he fucked up and that he needs to get the heck out of Dodge.
Angst Journal, October 4th, 2019. Heard a good joke the other day. Man is depressed, goes to see the doctor. Doctor, help me. I've lost everything. My rich friends won't talk to me anymore. My wife is mad all the time. And I founded a violent street gang of piss boys. Doctor says, treatment is simple. When I'm sad, I simply remember I'm not Gavin McInnes. Cheers me right up. Man bursts into tears. But doctor, I am Gavin McInnes. Doctor says, I know. Get the fuck out of my office. Roll on drum. Curtains. Good joke, heh?
So what's Gavin up to now that he isn't founding the Proud Boys anymore? Well, apparently he's trying to recruit guests for his new show, basically a debate show where he pairs up a liberal and a conservative and gets them to argue. The thing is, apparently in his desperate attempts to stay relevant, Gavin has been trying to pitch the show to liberals as an opportunity to make fun of him. Like they can come on his show and they can make him look foolish. I mean, firstly, that's obviously not how that works when you come on someone else's platform. They have all the power. But secondly, this is pretty interesting. It's interesting because it's such a sad attempt to still be in control of his situation. I think that's something that shows as a through line for all of the Proud Boys' utter humiliations and Gavin's continued clawing at the edges of relevance. That it's them making themselves into characters and that the criticism of those characters means nothing to them. After all, as the Gandhi quote goes, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. Actually, that isn't a Gandhi quote, it's just commonly misattributed to him, but that's the aesthetics of intellectualism, baby! They still want you laughing at them because that means they're being seen, and that's all they care about. People who are that desperate to be seen that they're willing to be laughed at are scary, because being laughed with is one of the best feelings there is, but being laughed at is one of the worst. And someone who's willing to put up with that humiliation just for attention has a terrifying determination. We know about Gavin's new show, by the way, because he tried to recruit Sam Cedar of the Majority Report for it. Sam, of course, didn't want to give Gavin the time of day, but thought it was a pretty good opportunity to try and get Steven Crowder, who had ducked out of debates with Sam in the past, to finally sit down and do the debate. Alas, Steve still continued to refuse to debate Sam, possibly because his manager didn't think he'd be up to the task. His manager, who's also, by the way, his dad. Hang on. Let me be clear about this. I am not saying it is funny that Steven Crowder's dad is his manager. I'm not saying that Crowder, who is the voice of Brain on the kids' show Arthur, sorry for ruining Arthur by the way, was probably pushed into his showbiz career by a helicopter parent and then, lacking any comedic talent whatsoever, just repeated increasingly disgusting conservative views in the style of jokes for the approval of people that he looks up to. I'm not saying that because that would be tragic, not funny. I'm also not saying that Lil Steve is the perfect case study of the way that men perform cruelty as if it's comedy in order to form a toxic masculine in-group that necessarily by definition eliminates anyone who doesn't find bigotry funny and brands them as either weak or too sensitive. And what I'm definitely, most certainly not saying is that Stevie's dad doesn't have the confidence in his ability to debate Sam Cedar and in his intelligence, because Steve spent his whole career parroting back things his dad told him. Because if I was saying that, that would be really fucking grim. Stephen and other conservative comedians are a pretty good case study of the post-masculine identity I was talking about before. A kind of ironic masculinity, engaging in all the shittiest behaviours and insisting it's just a joke. Now, to be clear, this is nothing new as a defense against accusations of being a total piss boy, but I think the contingent of men who actually sincerely, internally believe that their toxic masculinity is just a cute joke is an emerging identity, much more of a new recent thing. And also, to be clear about the term post-masculine, it doesn't mean that we live in a time after masculinity, when masculinity is over and done with. It refers to a society that is aware of feminist ideas, that has recognized masculinity. It refers to living in a time after its emergence or acknowledgement. Let's take a moment to talk about notorious big wet boy Ricky Gervais. Gervais recently started doing stand-up in the well-established "Am I offending you? Haha, you're so offended" genre of stand-up comedy, and then taking to Twitter to frequently search his own name and get definitely not mad at people saying he isn't funny. I could definitely talk a whole bunch here about how punching down is pathetic and not real comedy and just the constant reinforcement of a bigoted in-group. But I'm realizing as I write this that Ricky Gervais might name search on YouTube as well, and he probably doesn't have the attention span for all that. So, hi Ricky. I'm never going to stop tagging you on Twitter and calling you a big wet boy. You can click off the video now. One thing a lot of people who are now banned from commenting on my channel have said is that I don't engage properly in the ideas that I criticize. And that's because I usually read books by people I respect. But, point taken, so I picked up Conservatism by Roger Scruton. I wanted to check out conservatism in the words of a conservative, and what came across really strongly is that Scruton has no fucking idea what conservatism is. He spends a whole section defining the prehistory of conservatism, outlining ideas that conservatives today no longer believe, but the conservatives of the past did, with the exception of a few famous faces like Thomas Jefferson, who he tries to claim was a conservative in his own day, which is frankly just baffling. When he's done explaining that conservatives used to believe in the divine right of kings, he just moves on as if there's no intellectual massive inconsistency there that needs explaining. What becomes apparent to the reader is that conservatives just believe in not changing anything, whatever their current moment in history is, by whatever means necessary. But that revelation seems to elude Scruton. I kept thinking about Scruton and his terrible book while researching for this video because I think, just like Gervais and Crowder and McGuinness, Scruton is genuinely unaware that his political beliefs essentially boil down to defending the status quo at any cost. From the point of view of the right-wing comedian, he's a totally original, boundary-pushing act, and no one's ever thought of doing what he's gonna do before. And if someone doesn't like it, they're just anti-free speech. Next thing you know, Antifa are gonna show up and protest my gigs. The scary thing about Antifa? If they'll punch a fascist, what's next? They could punch me if I was a fascist. In 1936, on the 4th of October,
I'm the Joker, baby!
a famous battle occurred in London. It occurred in a place called Cable Street, which is why it's funnily enough remembered as the Battle of Cable Street. It happened because
Sir Oswald Mosley.
the British Union of Fascists tried to organise a march, and London, and specifically the working class Jewish community around Cable Street, said, no, fuck that. If you don't know,
Sir Oswald Mosley
was a weird rich old racist man who was a big fan of Hitler, black turtlenecks from the M&S menswear collection, and having piss and shit thrown on him by passers-by as he tried to hold fascist parades in the streets of London. Yes, really. They really knew how to show fascists the appropriate level of respect back in those days.
3,000 fascists marched accompanied by 6,000 police and counted by over 20,000
anti-fascists. The Battle of Cable Street is remembered as the moment when the fascists were driven back, never to be seen or heard from again. Except that memory is kind of useless and completely fucked and terrible. Because about a year later the fascists marched again, this time in Bermondsey, in a place near where I live, to celebrate the anniversary of the foundation of their organisation. Again, 3,000 fascists, again accompanied by 6,000 police, and according to some contemporary sources, an even bigger crowd of anti-fascist activists this time. The anti-fascists formed a blockade across the announced route, chaining old iron ovens and fridges and other bulky objects together to form a physical barrier because when we say battle, we mean battle. Anti-fascists speaking in anticipation of the event told crowds that these weren't people from Bermondsey expressing their fascist views. These were people from outside Bermondsey trying to invade, trying to take it. And that's true, that was the stated intention of the BUF march. It's crucial to understand that the anti-fascists represented, and to this day represent, the local community. That this was the working class people of Bermondsey fighting off
Sir Oswald Mosley.
and that because of their efforts he never got to hold his racist piss-boy rally in West Lane. At Bermondsey, as at Cable Street, anti-fascists said, just as they've said all around the world, they shall not pass. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Gandalf is Antifa. But more importantly, a lesson we should learn from the Battle of Bermondsey is that anti-fascism isn't a single fight against the forces of evil that defeats them once and for all, but an ongoing struggle. A constant effort that encompasses everything from taking down stickers and reporting graffiti to voting to, yes, punching fascists, and yes, punching me if I was a fascist. When you see Antifa reported on today, it can be really easy to just buy into the rhetoric that they're this extremist, radical group and not just local people organising together to stop fascism from sinking its disgusting claws into their local community. I love that headline. Bermondsey says no to fascism, because I think that's what Antifa means. And if you want to understand what Antifa means, you need to picture a place you live, a place you have lived, where you're from, your hometown. And that headline, my neighborhood says no to fascism. Okay, I've done my job. And since we're talking about headlines, let's talk about the New York Republican headquarters. Fox News reported on what happened there as Antifa attacks again, swords and vandalism at New York GOP office, and showed a video of a man brandishing a sword outside the GOP building. And naturally, I think, that would lead you to assume that Antifa attacked the Republican headquarters with swords. But in fact, the person in the video is, yes, drumroll please, Gavin McInnes. See, Gavin was there in this powerfully racist costume, apologies that you even have to see that, to reenact and celebrate the assassination of a Japanese politician by a far-right terrorist in the 1960s, an act he called an inspiring moment in his Instagram post about the event. It's a murder, Gavin, not a body positivity post. There's something interesting about Gavin, though. In 2017, as the alt-right were becoming more and more publicly prominent, he started distancing himself from them, claiming that their major focus is on race, whereas his is on Western values. Don't get me wrong here, Western values is the states' rights of the 2010s, but I think Gavin really means this. I think the fact that the Proud Boys aren't an exclusively white group, Gavin's transphobia, the no-fap rule, and this distancing, they all have something to do with each other. Ian Danskin made a really pertinent point in his video, White Fascism. He actually made loads of really pertinent points. I guess we're just going to have to keep referencing this video forever. Fascism as a word has become so ubiquitous and also so colloquialized that it seems ridiculous to people to ever sincerely call anyone or anything fascist, even when, by the most basic definitions of the word fascism, it is or they are. I think a similar thing has happened with the patriarchy, especially if you're quite online, because anti-feminist gotcha arguments have been so memed to hell, the idea of sincerely discussing the patriarchy seems, to some people, for want of a better word, a bit cringy. This expresses itself as a guilt, an apology, preempting the supposed audience reaction of discomfort at talking about something that edgy piss boys say you aren't allowed to talk about. With that out of the way, let's talk about fascism and the patriarchy. We could define fascism by a hierarchy that mythologizes an us, an in-group, as inherently superior, and everyone step by step less like that us as more and more inferior. In this system, anytime the fascists fail, the blame should be put onto people who are lesser, and so don't wholly belong to the us. The adage goes, fascism cannot fail, it can only be failed. The internal logic of fascism says that anytime you see someone failing at something, it doesn't make sense until you can explain why they are less like the us than they would need to be to succeed. This is where the word degenerate comes in. Anyone who lets fascism down is a degenerate, so they can just be cast aside. And this is where we encounter what I call the shrinking circle of fascism. An ever-contracting, tightening ring that just closes in and closes in until only the perfect, ideal person is left. I think it's a pretty useful term, and also describing it sounds a bit like a butthole, and that makes the fascists really uncomfortable. For white supremacists, lesser members of the white race exist essentially as a logical prop to explain why anyone white could ever do anything they disapprove of. For misogynists, a man seen doing anything wrong or inferior or embarrassing or honestly just unexpected is feminine. This is so baked into our language that many of us would say, like a girl, without thinking to just mean bad. So you see why I'm making this comparison. The patriarchy is itself a fascist institution. So getting back to our earlier dilemma, are the Proud Boys fascists? Yes. Are they racists? Also yes. But they don't exist to serve white supremacy and white fascism, they exist to be the stormtroopers of the patriarchy. They describe themselves as Western chauvinists. They're not aiming for Richard Spencer's white ethno-state necessarily, they're aiming for The Handmaid's Tale's Gilead. Although, it's also worth noting that The Handmaid's Tale's Gilead is a white ethno-state, and Richard Spencer's white ethno-state would necessarily be incredibly misogynistic. Now, my statement there only works if you agree that fascism, while often nationalist, is not inherently nationalist. My academic backing for that is but I think it's plain to see that English-speaking fascists in the US and the UK, especially in the age of the internet, view their mission as one and the same. They'll often talk more about the West than about their own country. And if those fascists can express nationalistic loyalty to something as nebulous as the West, or as patently fake as whiteness, I don't think it's a stretch to understand groups like the Proud Boys as expressing loyalty to masculinity, as if it were the borders of their nation. They are expressing nationalistic loyalty to the nation of manhood. And just as the black shirts of the 1930s were swindled into parading around playing dress up by a rich old asshole with a knighthood and probably gout, being told that they were defending the honour of Mother Britannia, today Gavin, an actual millionaire, is tricking sad boys online into thinking they're there defending manliness by putting on a special costume and refusing to masturbate. Right at the time of Joker's release, its director Todd Phillips made some comments to the effect that he's not making comedy films anymore because woke culture killed comedy. You can't be funny anymore because everyone expects you to be woke. All jokes insult someone and there's no such thing as a power dynamic anywhere in life. So insulting a minority group and insulting the rich and powerful is exactly the same thing. No one can possibly be funny without appealing to bigotry. My name's Todd Phillips and I see no difference between pooping and eating poop. Fine, that's not a direct quote. In response, Mark Maron, longtime comedian and actually actor in Joker, had a fair few words to say. In his podcast WTF, he said,
"You know, there's plenty of people being funny right now. Not only being funny, but being really fucking funny. There are still lines to be rode. If you like to ride a line, you can still ride a line. If you want to take chances, you can still take chances." I mean, really, the only thing that's off the table culturally at this juncture, and not even entirely, is shamelessly punching down for the sheer joy of hurting people, for the sheer excitement and laughter that some people get from causing people pain, from making people uncomfortable, from making people feel excluded, that excitement. And as I've said before, it's no excuse. I mean, if you're too intimidated to try to do comedy that is deep or provocative or even a little controversial, without hurting people, then, you're not good at what you do. I mean, that's just the deal. Maybe it's time for you to quit.
And I don't know if I could have said it better than that. What a king! Yeah, what a fucking lad. Thank you, Mark Maron! He also put it a little more succinctly in his interview with NME.
It's about men, women, and how men deal with being woke. The way I can't do that voice anymore.
What? No, just read the line.
I can put the glasses and the mustache back on,
No!
but I can't do this voice anymore.
No, just read the line!
The thing about the patriarchy is, it makes men powerful, not happy. And where a lot of conservative men point to the fact that they are unhappy as proof that the patriarchy doesn't exist. The Proud Boys have taken the fact that they get power through male privilege and decided that that is what makes them happy. Like the Joker. Yes, I guess kind of like the Joker. When these guys are funny characters with memes and jokes and secret symbols for their special boys club, they can do anything they want because they're untouchable. When they're funny, they're scary. But when you take a closer look and realize these ding-dongs actually derive their masculinity from a special uniform and a bunch of pictures of a cartoon frog, that's not scary. That's tragic. But that tragedy is pretty funny. There has to be a better model for masculinity than desperately clinging on to old, shitty behaviors through irony and memes and no-fap boys clubs. There has to be a model of masculinity that's about caring for the less fortunate, the less strong, about helping the less capable. Or failing that, just do what Mark Maron does and show these edgy piss boys you're tired of their bullshit.
I'm a dumb teen boy, I eat sticks and rocks and mud. I don't care about the government and I really need a hug. I feel stupid, ugly, pretend it doesn't bother me. I'm not very strong, but I'll fuck you up if you're mean to bugs. It's getting cold down here underneath the weather. I skipped class to sit with you. I really like your spotty sweater. If ladybugs are girls, how do you make kids together? What's it like in a female world? I bet it's just so much better. I just turned 14 and I think this year I'm gonna be mean. Don't mess with me, I'm a big boy now and I'm very scary. I punch my wall, stay out at night and I do karate. Don't message me cause I won't reply, wanna make you cry. Ain't that how it's supposed to be, though it isn't me, boys will be bugs, right?
Hey everyone. I'd like to thank Baphometrics and Ashley Thraxton for producing incredible music for this channel. In particular, this cover of Cave Town's Boys Will Be Bugs. I'd also like to thank everyone who helped with the research for this video, my Patreon supporters for keeping me alive, and you, the viewer, for watching all the way to the end. If you'd like to support the channel, you can go to patreon.com/curiovids to see additional content and get early access to these videos. Sometimes I also make longer versions of my videos just for $2 plus patrons, and you can get access to those too. This month, I'd like to introduce you to Lottie Blix and Cass Eris. Lottie is a lefty NB Twitch streamer whose streams are always a lot of fun and you should definitely go follow right away. Cass is an academic psychologist making a series where they break down Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life chapter by chapter, and it's honestly one of my favorite things on YouTube right now. Thanks again for watching. Remember, fascism is a loser ideology, and see you next time.
I just turned 14 and I think I know everything. Don't mess with me, I'm a big boy now and I'm very scary. I punch my wall, stay out at night and I do karate.